that is what gets me up early in the morning. That is what fuels me to continue to do this every single day, is those few little messages that say that I made an impact on somebody's life.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. Hi, everyone. This week, I'm excited to welcome lifestyle blogger and influencer Ryanne Janca back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. If you've been listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp for a while now, you may remember my first conversation with Ryanne way back in 2022. But just in case you are new here or need a quick refresher, let me quickly tell you about Ryanne. In 2018, Ryanne was working as a corporate recruiter when she was forced to leave her job because her husband was promoted to an executive role at the same company, and a corporate policy said she could no longer work there. From there, Ryanne totally reinvented and pivoted her career. She launched The Recruiter Mom, a lifestyle blog and vibrant online community. Her online community had grown to over 33,000 people already back in 2022 at the time of our first conversation. And today, just a few years later, it has grown to over 400,000 people. Every day, Ryanne shares up-to-the-minute insights on all things fashion, home organization, travel, gift guides, good deals, and more. And she has done it all amidst an ever-changing influencer industry and a sea of change in her personal life as well. In our first conversation, we explored everything that went into her career pivot, her daily research and content creation process, and what she's learned along the way about following her passions. This time, we dove even deeper into her journey, processes, and success secrets. Ryanne's authenticity, entrepreneurial spirit, and courage to do things on her terms is truly inspiring, and I hope you take away as much from Ryanne as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Ryanne Janca. Where I want to begin, in our first conversation back in spring of 2022, it's hard to believe it's been that long. That conversation was in many ways the first time that you really shared your story so publicly with your community and with the public in this format. I'm curious, now that you've had a chance to reflect on the conversation we had a few years ago, how did that experience feel for you? Kind of going back, rehashing some of these big moments of your career as you've built your business and your new life as an Instagram influencer. Talk about that for a moment.
I think that it was such a valuable experience because, again, with social media, people get like clips of me. So they don't, even as I've told my story, 90% of my audience is going to miss it. So it's always been fantastic to have that podcast and be like, if you want to know what really happened and how I got into this, there's a full conversation where I tell you about where the Recruiter Mom name came from, my eye tumor, how I transitioned from corporate America. And all of it is in that fantastic conversation that I can send people back to and be like, okay, here's the basis of how I started, why I started, what makes this such an amazing experience in business for me. So I've sent people back to that podcast so many times over the last couple of years.
Well, I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for the conversation that we had a few years ago and grateful we're getting to have another one. You have had so much change and growth and evolution in your business and in your life since then. I mean, just the numbers and the sheer scale of the Recruiter Mom. I looked back that day that we had that conversation, you had about 33,000 followers, which was a big deal. Today, it's nearly 500,000, over 415,000 followers. Your community and your audience has scaled. Your business has changed and evolved. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, your life has continued to have a lot of change and evolution too, with
numerous moves. So I'm curious, you shared there a little bit about how you felt coming out of that conversation. What type of feedback, if any, did you get from some of the recruiter mom loyalists who maybe had heard pieces of that story for the first time and maybe knew you a little better? Any feedback from them?
Yeah, I definitely got a lot of responses from women that had obviously not been in my exact same situation, but I think it's common for really a lot of people to go through evolutions within their own career. So a lot of women saying, hey, I had to start over after COVID, or I made a career change. And like just hearing your story really gave me that confidence to go into a new opportunity with a more positive attitude. Because truly, had you asked me when I left my corporate career, would I be doing this? And this summer will be 7 years. For 7 years, I would have been like, you're crazy. But it's so fantastic to know like, hey, we can reinvent ourselves. You can be as successful in something new as maybe you were in a previous career. And I got a lot of that feedback from the women that followed me of like, wow, you really can reinvent yourself and find something else that you love as a second career, maybe even a third career.
How different, Ryanne, would you say where you are today, 7 years into this? Like, how different does the business look relative to what the initial business plan, if there was one, actually looked like 7 or so years ago?
Yeah, it has changed a lot. Obviously, I think even in the social media world, it has changed quite a bit. When I first started doing this, it came off of my love to be in Facebook groups and online and shopping. And I was already in, buy, sell, trade groups. Obviously, with the evolution of Instagram and then during COVID, TikTok and that taking off, it has changed the social media platform and what a content creator is. Even in the past 3 years since we've talked, so much technology has changed. So while I started this kind of as a hobby, a side hustle, something to do with my time, it has absolutely evolved into a true business. And kind of as I've gone on, my core founding value has always been, how can I add value to women's lives? And I've been able to do that obviously with my content, but as my business has grown, I've been able to do that as I build my team and as I build my own business. And that's been really, really rewarding.
One of the things that I've heard you say, Ryanne, is this idea, and you used the words there, hobby and business. You've said that if you treat something like a hobby, it'll kind of look like a hobby. And if you treat something like a business, it'll look and function and the results will look like a business. At what point did that switch flip for you? And you said, okay, this is going to go from a hobby to a business. And like, what did that transformation look like?
I think that some of it did come back when I lived in Texas pretty early on, when you start to get a group of like-minded individuals that are doing a similar business as yours. And I was very, very lucky to find that early on within my content creating career. So I have a group of friends that were very involved in Facebook. I have a group of friends that are very involved in Instagram, and really bouncing those ideas off of those women. That's when it got more serious for me, is as I saw their successes and as I could emulate my business after women that were really becoming very successful, I was like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. And I think in content creation, when I say hobby versus business, there are content creators, and I think a lot of TikTok started off this way too, is like, what I'm wearing today. I'm just going to show my outfit of the day. I'm going to post one time a day. This is what I'm wearing. This is what I like. That's, in my mind, a lot of a hobby of content creation. When you're thinking of it as a business, it's, how do I serve my audience? What do they need? So it stops being about like what I think is cute and really helping my audience find the things that they need. And that mind switch is really big in content creation and where my business is today. I structure everything based off of, in my mind, a busy mom. What is she Googling for right now? What is on her calendar? What is she trying to prep for that I could help find that for her and give her more time back in her own life?
How did that change kind of how you were operating on a day-to-day basis? I mean, I would imagine in the hobby context, or when you were closer to that phase, like you said, you're just kind of going through your life and you're sharing and kind of hoping that it resonates with people. Yeah. Then you're kind of flipping it on its side and you're trying to imagine what, your audience is interested in. Last time we talked, you talked about your content schedule and getting up early to put these different capsules together. how did that kind of change the way you had to operate, like from a day-to-day basis, when it went from hobby in your mind to, hey, we're going to look at this differently?
I think at a certain point in everyone's life, you get to a point you're like, there are no more hours in my day. Like, I can only do so much. I'm a mom, I'm a businesswoman. And as much as I do still get up between typically 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning, I'm still creating content. I'm still getting up, looking at deals, posting early in the morning, taking my kids to school, working throughout the day. I couldn't really expand on that until I got more help. And that really happened when I moved to Colorado. So I'll give you a little bit of that story because it's a fun one. When we moved here, I said, okay, I'm going to delegate some more. I really need some help getting unpacked and getting our house set up so that I could get to life as fast as possible. So I hired an organization company and they came in and unpacked our kitchen, organized it, and they did a couple other spaces. And in that week or so, maybe like 4 days that they were unpacking and organizing the house, one of the employees that worked with that company, we just got to talking and come to find out her daughter and my daughter were in the same class. We lived in the same neighborhood and she was originally from Texas. And so we clicked immediately. And so I kind of on the side was like, hey, if you ever are looking for like another part-time job, I probably could use someone. And so immediately, so we moved into our house in March. Kristen started with me in May. And so for the past 2.5 years that we've been in Colorado, I've had a part-time in-person assistant. And having Kristen has allowed me, because she does all of my unboxing, she does all of my steaming, returns, donations. Really, she is just my everything. And that has allowed me to free up more time for that brainstorming and content creation and giving more to my audience and freeing up the time that is just back end stuff that you don't really need me for. And having that friendship and having somebody here has just been instrumental.
It's so funny how that all works out. It sounds like the two of you are in a way kindred spirits. You had all these common threads that you were able to identify. And I think one of the cool things about your story and so many entrepreneurs is that from the start, you have to do it all. You have to be willing and able to do everything. You've got to figure out a way. I'd like to call that pulling the tarp. As you know, everybody pulls the tarp. You've got to be willing to do the nitty gritty, the little unexpected things, all the details. Never say that's not my job. But even though you are willing to pull the tarp and you live that everybody pulls the tarp mindset, when something grows, there comes a point when it's also beneficial to have an artful and elegant way to delegate to others and bring others along to pull the tarp with you. And it sounds like you've done a really, really good job of that. I am curious. I mean, when you're talking about something, yes, it's a business, but at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to your personal brand and people getting to know you. How hard was it to relinquish certain aspects of this to somebody other than yourself? Because there are people listening who I think are wrestling with that, maybe in different contexts of, they want help, they want to delegate, but they don't know how to do that.
Well, I went through a lot of growing pains, I guess is the best way to say it. When we first talked, I do still have a management company. At that time, they were doing a little bit of content creation for me and more in the lines of building out blog posts, making collages, those sorts of things. But what I found through that process is there really was a disconnect because a lot of the employees with that management company were 25 and they were straight out of college. And I'm like, yeah, so you're not really thinking like a 40-year-old mom is. So a year ago, I finally, after 6 years, convinced my cousin, who is one of my close friends, our kids have grown up together, to be my full-time assistant virtually. So she came on board last July, and finding somebody that is like-minded, that really gets that same, your style, the pain points for moms, kind of living the same parallel life that I am, has been huge. So I think that a lot of it goes back to finding the right people, which even back in my corporate recruiting days, that is such a big deal of just finding the right people for your team. And when that happens, it really does click and it makes it so much easier.
It all comes together. I want to talk more about your corporate recruiting days and maybe even some of the jobs and work and things that you've did before that. I am curious though. I mean, when finding the right people, I find is this hard balance, right? Between finding people that are like-minded, to use your word there, but also finding people that come from a little bit of a different discipline and a different perspective and can challenge your thinking. One of my biggest joys in this journey that I've been on, talking to hundreds of the world's most successful people, is that I find that I learn just as much from a Olympian, a professional athlete, a Grammy winner, a best-selling romance novelist, an Instagram influencer, a CEO, you name it. I find that you can learn something from everybody, but you do have to be careful and make sure that you're applying it to your own world and your own ecosystem the right way. You've surrounded yourself with some like-minded people that can really understand what you're trying to do. Do you also try and find people kind of outside of your initial day-to-day circle to try and get some fresh ideas in there? Talk about that for a moment.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the greatest things, and again, I think that's happened more since the first time that we talked, is that there has been more opportunities for me to go to conferences. So LTKCon is a really big conference that's held by an affiliate company. Amazon actually started their own Amazon Creator Summit. I also went on some girls trips, with some of my content creator friends. And with every single one of those, while the conference is great and you do learn some things, it's sitting down with those other individuals that are doing it a little bit differently. I mean, I remember having conversations. Her name is Jill. Jill Comes Clean. Like, she does a lot of home content creation. She's very big on TikTok and Instagram, and having those like sidebar conversations of, okay, how can you do this on Facebook, and learning from one another of like, hey, this is what I'm doing and what's working, and here's what I'm doing that's not working, and what are you seeing? Like, it is so fun to be able to have those one-on-one conversations. And I would say that I've had more of those opportunities within the last 3 years than I did the previous 5 years.
But how do you balance? But I guess the follow-up question I would have to that is, you're taking all this information, and what everybody else is doing is so public in your world. Yes. How do you resist the urge at the same time? I'm kind of looking at this both angles. How do you take all this information and take all these ideas in, but then resist the urge to try and do everything and tackle too much?
That one's hard. I mean, I think that is the biggest curse of a content creator is getting overwhelmed in that comparison game. And so what I've really tried to do is not compare, but learn. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, well, that person hit 500,000 followers so much faster than me, like, why is that not happening for me? It's like, okay, well, what are the things that they're doing that maybe I'm not doing yet? What can I implement into my own business where that could be successful? And when can I just sit back and applaud and go, great job, like, awesome, you're killing it. It's when you get into the mindset of, oh, I'm never going to be as good, or it's never going to grow for me like that. That negative mindset I really try to stay away from, and not compare in that way, but rather learn and say, okay, what can I emulate that makes sense for me? And that is one thing that I started doing, gosh, now I have to think about it, 1.5 years ago with my Instagram. So my Instagram was really stagnant. I felt like for a long time, it took me a really long time, in my opinion, to 100,000 followers. And so I started looking around at some of the accounts that maybe were like similar fashion, beauty, home type of accounts. And what were they doing that really made their page grow exponentially? And with the Instagram algorithm, really like getting nitty gritty into one single category is what the algorithm likes. So now what you see on my Instagram content is almost all fashion, especially in my feed, and it's almost all reels. Do I love that? No, because I'm a very multifaceted person, but I realized on that platform, that's what works. And so really I saw a lot of growth when I changed my own mindset of what I want to do versus what the platform wants me to do. And it still allows me to have all of those other pillars of content in other ways. If you go to my Facebook, it's a whole slew of things. If you go to my blog, it's a whole lot of different types of content. But I started to really say, okay, this is what this platform wants me to be doing, and feed it what it wants.
Well, it's interesting, right? And some would hear you say that and say, well, you're kind of just playing to the algorithm. But I look at it differently. I view it as you're playing to the algorithm, and by doing it that way, what it does is it enables you to reach more people and impact more people through all these different ways, right? Instagram is just one channel that you have. You hit on some of them. I also really enjoy the email newsletter. I know that that's something, that is a way to keep up with your life and all the things. So I'm curious, you talked about, from your vantage point, feeling like it was really slow and steady to at least 100,000 by your standards. But ever since, I mean, it has, in my view, it has exploded. As I mentioned, in spring of 2022, you had about 33,000 followers when we recorded our last conversation. Your audience has grown more than 12 times to over 415,000 now. When you look back on that that inflection point, what do you credit most, in addition to some of the things that you've outlined? You talked about kind of gearing things more for your audience, for the Instagram algorithm. Like, what else would you add into the mix there as some of the biggest drivers of your accelerated growth period?
It's really interesting. So there is very much a trend on Instagram that does work, is reintroducing yourself to your audience. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of people that look at content that aren't following you yet, that maybe haven't seen it, that haven't heard my story. And so I got better of like, this is who I am. And if this is a pain point of yours, here's why you should follow me. If you're mid-size and you're trying to figure out what to wear to work, guess what? I do a lot of workwear. If you're struggling right after the holidays and you're not feeling your best and you need some work, this is who I am. So reintroducing myself, not only to my audience, but to my potential audience on a more routine basis, I saw a lot of growth from those types of posts, for people saying like, oh yeah, I do need that. Or yes, that is kind of where I am in life as well. So I got better about that versus assuming, oh, well, they already know me. Because the truth is they don't. And people are finding you every single day.
They don't. And I always am amazed, when I talk to other content creators, this idea that you assume that people are going to just think you're repeating yourself all the time. But the reality is that people need to hear things multiple times to learn them and truly digest them. And in many instances, people aren't seeing what you're sharing. So if you don't share it multiple times, then they're never going to see it.
Well, I've been talking about our move from Colorado to Albuquerque since we found out right after Christmas. So it's been 5 months. And every time I talk about our move, I still get DMs of, wait, you're moving? So it just reminds me of like, no, not everybody is seeing this. They're not always, you can say the same thing multiple times and no one's going to get tired of it.
In what way? Now, 33,000 people following anything you're doing is a lot of people, but 415,000 and nearly 500,000 now is a whole different story. What about the challenges? How has it, even if it's not like a specific physical or business challenge, are there mental and emotional challenges that you've had to deal with? Like just feeling like you're operating at a bigger scale than you were. Talk about that for a minute. Challenges associated with all of the success that you've had.
Yeah, I think early on when I first started this, my kids were involved in a lot of content. I was coming from a mindset of like what toys they like and what clothes that I buy for my kids. And then also my content built in. And as my kids have gotten older and older, I've been more private on how they're involved and really only when they want to be involved. And they do kind of ebbs and flows on their involvement in things. But truly the family member that you don't ever see is my husband. I mean, very, very rarely do you see him in any sort of content because he has his own career and he has like his own life going on. But as he's been promoted, and that's the reason, just to make this clear, the reason why we've moved is not for me. My husband has received multiple promotions within his own job, and that's what's moved us these different places, is that he's gone to interviews and sitting with other candidates. And in those interviews, people saying, oh, well, I follow your wife. And that's really weird for me still. So you try to like keep some things private, but as my audience has grown, I do get recognized places. My daughter was recognized when we were at this is like an art museum or something in Denver. And she was like, I thought it was you, but then I saw your daughter and I recognized her. And so that part of it can be a little bit weird sometimes too. It's just that anonymity is just, it goes away at a certain point.
Yeah, it's one of those things I always like to say, it's like toothpaste. Like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once it's out. Like that's one of those things that you kind of have to deal with. You can't go backwards in that context. All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. Okay, last time, Ryanne, we talked a lot about kind of the lead up to your decision to start the Recruiter Mom. Shortly, but I guess 2017-ish timeframe, you had an eye tumor, a medical condition. You had kind of left your job. You and your husband had been working at the same company. Just around the time you're about to come back, he gets promoted to an executive officer position. The company policy says you're no longer able to work there. There was some chance that you could come back as a contractor, but for all intents and purposes, your role there was done. And at that point, you decided to figure out a way to shop for a living, I guess is the way you described it. But I am curious. I mean, you had this wonderful career as an executive recruiter leading up to the time when you pivoted and began the Recruiter Mom. What about before? Like, was corporate America, I mean, you certainly, I'm sure years ago weren't thinking I'm going to build an influencer business where I'm going to share gift guides and fashion and home recommendations. What about like that first phase of your career? We didn't talk about that too much last time. Talk about that. Like, what were some of the things that you aspired to when you were younger? How did you get into all that? Take me back a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. So we didn't talk about this a whole lot. And I did get some questions from my audience of, tell me your path. So I went to Texas Tech. I was a marketing major, but at that point in time, my parents were able to pay for about the first year of college. And at that point in time, I was on my own. So really early on, I realized, okay, I need to get a job. I need to work full time and I need to put myself through the rest of college. So I started working retail because that's what you do in Lubbock, Texas. Either you're in restaurants or retail. There's not a whole lot else there. And I helped open up the Abercrombie adult store when I was end of my freshman year and started working there full time. I was a brand rep, then I was an intern, and then I became an assistant manager. Then they decided to open up an Abercrombie kids store. And I immediately went over there as an assistant manager. And by the time that I was graduating, I was the store manager. Well, I graduated in 2002. So obviously 9/11 had just happened. And I remember sitting in my senior level marketing class and the professor said, raise your hand if you have a job after college. And granted, this is one of those big 300 kid classrooms. Me and maybe 3 other people raised their hand. So it was at a time where no one was hiring. There was no opportunities. So I just stayed working retail. And it was that grit and that grind of like, okay, this is what's available. And that's what transitioned me to finding the job that I did in the corporation. Is just, it was one of the other places that was hiring, but I had that work ethic and that grind for so many years working my way through college that they saw that. And that was one of the things that they look for in their training program is overcoming adversity and working through obstacles, which I have been doing most of my life. So that's really how I got to the things before I was a corporate recruiter.
Thinking of those Abercrombie stores takes me back, certainly, Ryanne. Working in retail, I always say there are a handful of types of things that really equip you to develop a lot of different skill sets. And working in retail certainly is one of them. What were some of your fondest or maybe not so fond memories and experiences working in retail that you felt like really shaped you a little bit as a professional?
Well, it's kind of funny now. Obviously, a lot of the things that I do, in addition to like my try-ons and things like that, we do a lot of content creation on collages or images or graphics. And I loved in retail doing a floor set, seeing when those colors came together, when you were merchandising and changing floor sets. Like that was always something that I absolutely loved, just the creativity of placing merchandise different ways so that people would love it. And it's so crazy to me that it's come full circle and I get to do that in a different way now. also the camaraderie part of it too. I loved being with people. I loved our, late nights doing those floor sets, but also as I became higher in management, encouraging others, being able to be a mentor or help hire people. And now that again has really come full circle in what I do today.
It sure has. You are in a profession where I think a lot of people, and we talked about this a few years ago, a lot of people look from afar and say, well, that is glamorous. That must be easy. That must be fun. And it may be very rewarding, and it may be something that you enjoy that gives you a lot of fulfillment and passion, but it is not easy. Right. It doesn't just happen. You are incredibly intentional about everything that you do. And I just think it's amazing how these things come together. I think back, now that I understand that part of your past, I mean, the little details that go into how you display apparel in a store, what the store looks like, the setup, the configuration, the windows, all these things require the same attention to detail that you put into your posts and your content and your try-ons every single day.
It really does. I mean, that attention to detail is a huge part of it. That was also for me when hiring onto my team, I wanted people that understood that. It's hard to find, crazy enough, those individuals that really have that good work ethic, that attention to detail, that isn't going to be okay with mailing it in, but going to go that extra mile.
How do you find that? Well, stepping back, I'm thinking now about a conversation that I had with Shay McGee, the co-founder of Studio McGee. And she told me that she said, Andrew, I can change the way an entire room looks just by shifting a lamp a couple of inches. Every little detail matters. And she went on to say, that I could also change a person's entire outlook on life with one item from Target, right? Little things make massive, massive differences. And that's something that I think, I live in trying to put in place and I'm trying to apply in my life, this idea that every little detail really matters. And you clearly do as well. How do you balance, that sometimes what could be perceived as like perfectionism with also just pushing send and letting something fly? Because if we're constantly perfecting every little detail, we're never going to publish anything.
I'm very lucky in the world of social media that things last for like 24 hours. So if I don't love it, it's not around for very long. And also I've said this to a lot of employees that have kind of come through the Recruiter Mom system is there's not a whole lot of things also that we can't fix on the back end. So if a post goes up on Facebook and the picture is blurry, or maybe the link was wrong when a newsletter came out, we can fix it on the blog. We can republish that. So there's a lot of things that can be fixed on the back end. So let's just get it out the best way that we can. But if it is not perfect, it's fine. We can fix it. It's catching those and getting better throughout that process of fixing it as much as possible on the front end. But I no longer worry as much as maybe I used to on it being perfect. It is much more of hey, let's get it out there the best way possible. But if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. It's fine.
And from my vantage point, I know that probably 99% of your demographic is women, but I certainly appreciate what you do because there's people in women's lives who want to know what they're interested in, and your gift guides are also top notch. And from my view, I think one of the cool things about what you've built is that there's authenticity. And I think some of that authenticity comes with a recognition that everything is not going to be perfect. Everything is not going to be perfectly curated and perfectly manicured. You're going to get a lot of kind of just my daily thoughts and perspectives and the content that you share. I think there's something to that too. It's just a balance, obviously.
It is. And I think that we are really seeing social media switch a lot of that, many, many years ago, it started as a very perfected curation on Instagram. And it has really moved to the more authentic that you are, the more that you are going to gain those followers. And you may not see my imperfections in feed, but if you follow me on stories, life is not perfect. And you've seen me without makeup. You see me with my hair wet. You see me in all sorts of frantic states of moving and crying and all the things that happen in real life, because that is real life. And I don't ever want any one of my followers or anybody in my community to feel alone. I want them to know that my life is not perfect. Things are not perfect a lot of times, and it's okay to be sitting in that place sometimes.
Well, Ryanne, I am enjoying this conversation so much. And one of the fun things that we did for this go around is we asked, you've alluded to it a few times, we've asked your followers to submit questions, and you're addressing a lot of their questions. They are really fascinated, your audience, about how you do everything that you do. And
yes,
it's also probably born from admiration of how you're managing everything that you've got both going on personally and professionally. You've alluded to it also a few times. You've moved numerous times over the last couple of years. One of the questions that your audience has, that your followers have, is this idea of your process of finding the clothes that you review and that you try on and you share feedback.
Yeah.
What is your process? You talked about your assistant helping you a bit with some of the back end, but talk about that process. Like, how do you even begin to kind of funnel the universe of clothing that's out there to something that Ryanne Janca is going to try on and share perspectives on?
I think that it's really important for me to first say to all of my audience, there is not a single thing that you see on me that I have not picked out myself. Even when it comes to brand collaborations, you get a lot of leniency of what you want to choose, even within that own campaign. So when I am showing things on my body, like I bought that, I picked that, there are sometimes that items are gifted, but I would say that at this time in influencer world, maybe 20% of items are gifted and 80% I'm purchasing on my own. So you have to go through the idea of, okay, I get, just like any mom right now, I'm looking at my calendar, I'm looking a month ahead. What do I have going on next month? Okay, right now I'm thinking about end of school. I'm thinking about possibly some summer trips. I'm thinking about what are my kids doing this summer? How am I going to keep them entertained? How am I going to keep my house clean when they're asking for snacks 24/7 and destroying the house all day? What am I going to wear to different activities? So I'm thinking typically as a content creator a month in advance. I'm already starting to think about Father's Day gifts. So Andrew, I'll be calling you on that one. But
okay.
So I do think about a month ahead. What are all of those pain points that I have and that my audience is going to have? And how do I fulfill that? So yes, I do a ton of gift guides, and those are some of my favorite things because I am literally going through websites and going through pages and pages and pages of ideas to pick the things that I would genuinely give the people that I love, that I've already gifted to people. I'm also thinking about outfits and say, okay, if I did have this, have I had a summer wedding to go to in a while? No, I haven't. But I know that that is on a lot of people's calendars. Kind of same thing with graduation is going on right now, especially like college graduations. I have not had a college graduation to go to, but I have a lot of friends that have kids in high school that are thinking about that. So just again, kind of going through what's going to be on your calendar, what's a pain point that my audience is going to have with that. And then I start buying things. Truly, it is a massive amount of buying things. So I get stuff shipped to me constantly. My UPS guy probably hates me. It's fine. So we get a lot of things in. And just like if your wife was ordering it, if she was going to go to a wedding, she may order 4 dresses to try on to see what she likes the most and see what fits her. For me, I have to be a little bit more broad of say, okay, if she were to order 4 dresses, I'm probably going to order 10 to 15 dresses. And within that, same thing. How does it fit? Do I have something similar already? Do I really have a place to wear this to? But in that process, I'm going to show you all the options that I picked. Here are all 10, 15 dresses. And maybe it's not my style, but maybe it's somebody else's style in my audience. Maybe I'm only wanting sleeveless dresses because I'm in Texas. Whereas now living in Colorado, I'm like, it's May and I could still use long sleeves. I'm providing options for a variety of women across the nation. So I like to put that variety in my content. And then I do return the things that don't fit in my life, that aren't going to be used for an event that I'm going to. So that's really how it goes.
And then one of the other things that people wonder is what happens with the stuff after, the stuff that works in those try-ons. How long does that stay in your closet? And when you're done with it, where does it go from there?
That always is a really big question. So there's a couple lucky ladies in my life that do get boxes shipped to them of items. And truly things cycle out of my closet when they go out of stock. So there are some brands in which, like, Loft is a great example. They will have new releases. They'll probably be on their website for maybe about 3 to 4 months. And then that product never comes back again. Like, it was that season. You never see that same top really come back. At that point in time, I'm having it exit from my closet. I'm either sending it to a friend or I'm doing local donations. Just recently with the California fires, I did have a couple of women within my kind of audience that had said, hey, I lost everything. If you are doing a closet clean out, can you keep me in mind? And so I did send some special boxes to some individuals that had been affected by the California fires as well.
I had seen that and I thought that was so cool that you did that. And I'm not surprised because you really do genuinely think about your audience as a community.
You do.
What about you? We talked about it a little bit earlier, just the algorithm and just trying not to do everything that everybody else is doing and playing that comparison game. But like, how do you stay up to date with the changes on Instagram? This was another question that came from your followers. Like, Instagram seems like it's always changing. It must make you want to pull your hair out at times. How do you keep up with those changes in a way that's effective for you?
Here's the funny part though, Andrew, is like Instagram is just one small problem child in the grand scheme of all the problem children that I have of social media. So it's not just dealing with Instagram's algorithm changes. It's also dealing with Facebook's algorithm changes. On top of that, you have affiliate platforms that are changing things constantly. So whether it's how their platform is catering to the audience, who they're showing things to, if you want to be in this space, you absolutely have to love technology. You have to love learning something new. You have to be okay with things changing nearly daily. I mean, that's the biggest thing about it. But like I said, I also have a really good core group of friends where we're able to, I mean, we're on a big text chain together. We're like, did you see this? Is this happening to you today? This isn't working. What are you seeing? I think just this weekend, a couple of my friends said that their Facebook feed changed to a grid feed all of a sudden with no notice. So things like that happen all the time. And you just have to be adaptable. If you do not have the ability to go with the flow and change and be adaptable, this is not the industry for you.
So on that note, what is something that you felt like really served you well during your corporate career, but you had to like totally unlearn or relearn as you shifted to this phase of your career?
I think it's that. It's the, well, this is what we do. You know, kind of that mindset of like, I learned my job, I'm good at my job, and this is just kind of how it goes. It is relearning my job every month. I mean, things are constantly changing and being hungry to learn. Even within my own business, yes, I have had some success on Instagram in that growth, but where are the other places that I can still grow? Where are the other places that we can still get into that I really haven't yet? Whether that's Facebook ads or maybe that's building, you had mentioned, you know, my email subscribers. How do I get good in all those different areas and continue to build the web of things versus just one platform?
To me, that's something there's many things that are really fascinating about you and the way that you've built this, but I think the way that you've maintained and continued to develop this web, as you describe it, all these different components of your platform, I think has been very fascinating at a time when it certainly seems like there's others in your space who just double down on one.
Yeah.
And that's it. I think that's been, and what for you, maybe in addition to curiosity and willingness to learn, what for you has been kind of the main driver in wanting to kind of create that web as opposed to focus all in on one or two components?
I think for the content creators that have lived through 9/11, 2008, when the economy tanked, through COVID, you know that nothing is guaranteed and anything can happen. And having that life experience of knowing like the world can shut down in 1 week and you're not sure what's going to happen. having those life experiences have really taught me that having your eggs all in one basket is never going to be the best idea. The more you can diversify in a business, the stronger core that you have. And so that's always been really, really important to me from the very beginning. Because again, I lost and left a corporate career that I thought that I'd be at for a very long time. So I've learned that lesson. And so I continue to say, hey, growth is great, but let's have sustained growth again amongst all the things that we're doing.
It's something that I think about often as well in my world, is this idea that, if the podcast apps made a change suddenly overnight and suddenly you were disconnected from your audience, how could you continue that conversation with people that I'm so grateful, listen in every week? And how do you tend to pick up that conversation? That's one of the things that I've been passionate about, is building my email newsletter, which is called Tart Pullers. And many people listening read along as well. It's just another dimension to continue the conversation. So you talked about some things there that kind of have prepared you and prepared your mindset to kind of prepare for the worst, prepare for challenges. I am curious.
Probably.
You talked about following your stories and seeing, the frenetic pace that you often run at. What are the types of things that cause the bad days for Ryanne Janca? What are the types of things that really maybe kind of knock you off course?
It really is never social media, to be really honest with you. First and foremost, I'm a busy mom of two. I have a lot of responsibilities within our own family life. I like stability and no change. So these past years of moving and having a lot of change has been really difficult for me. And so there's been times where it's like, and I would even say last week, I felt overwhelmed with the amount of life responsibilities that I had, that sometimes I just take a break. And I had not really been good at doing that up until probably like the last 2 years of really taking vacation and being offline for an entire week, taking 3 days and not posting. So I have realized for my own mental health and to be as good of a mom and partner and spouse that I can be, is that I need to know when to step away and focus on some life stuff, get that handled so that I can be as good as I can for my community.
So in addition to stepping away, because that sounds like something that you've learned to do and you've gotten better at over time, what are some of the things that create the positive energy for Ryanne Janca? And I think we can look at this through both dimensions. We can look at this through kind of the positive energy and fulfillment that you get from this community that you've built with the Recruiter Mom. And then also in general, just what brings Ryanne joy. I know you love a good beach read, a rom-com, and are always with that Kindle. You're with that Kindle when you get a chance. Talk about that for a minute. Let's start first with your community. What are some of the moments, some of the interactions that you've had that maybe make this feel like it's all worth it in the end? And then we'll talk about some of the things that you do for fun to recharge.
From the very beginning, every time that I would get a private message that said, thank you so much, I don't see myself reflected online and you helped me with X, Y, or Z, that has always been what has fueled me in this space. As social media has grown, you do see more of that mid-sized content creator. You do see more of women saying like, hey, this is my body. I'm size 12, 14. I'm in my mid 40s. That's not always represented, all over Instagram and social media. So the times that I've had DMs from women that said, I have not felt confident in my body and you helped me buy something that made me feel confident at X, Y, or Z event that I went to, that is so huge for me, because I will go back even further, Andrew. Like when I was growing up, I was like, my thighs have always touched. Like I've always been on the heavier side. I was on the taller side even when I was in middle school. I joke my daughter is all legs. Like that's from her dad. Like that is not from my genetics. I always felt a little bit uncomfortable in my own body and was just, that's how I grew up. So when I can help women feel confident in their own body, looking the best way they possibly can, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes, but like that is the most rewarding thing that I could possibly do. That is what gets me up early in the morning. That is what fuels me to continue to do this every single day is those few little messages that say that I made an impact on somebody's life because they felt good in what they were wearing. Like that is just, it's everything.
I can see the emotion in your face and in your voice there. And it's so admirable what you're doing and the way you go about it. And it's so evident that this mission means so much to you. It's more than a business, it's a community. And I think that's very, very neat. I am curious. I mean, you kind of touched on it also there a little bit. I mean, now there are, again, it's not maybe what's reflected most on social media, but there are a lot of different influencers in different categories and subcategories that are popping up to try and cater to all kinds of different people. But, I think it's easier to look at where you are now and say, well, there's a lot of people that are trying to play in Ryanne's space in mid-size fashion, mid-40s mom fashion, right? But there was a point when this wasn't the case. You were really an early adopter in this space. And I guess at that point, before you had all these messages, before you had all these people coming to you and tell you how meaningful this work that you were doing was, what gave you the conviction to kind of step out of the sea of sameness and say, I'm going to do something a little bit different when not a lot of people were?
Again, a lot of it came back to that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see someone like me on social media. I was looking for that as a corporate recruiter, as a busy mom. I'm like, can someone just tell me how this fits if you're not a size 4? Like, for the love. Yeah. So that was my frustration with social media going into this. It's like, well, then if nobody's doing that, fine. I'll be the person that does it. I'll be the one that actually tells you what size that I'm wearing. I'll be the one that says, you know what, this fabric is horrible. Like, burn it. Don't send it back. Like, it is bad. I think that we've gotten to a place a lot of times where with social media, it's like everything is wonderful and everything fits great. In reality, that is not the world that most women live in. Most of the time, most women, 50% of the things that you buy in order online, they don't fit great. There aren't the fabric that you're expecting. So the more and more honest that I've been able to be with my audience and get that trust and get them to say, hey, I'm doing the legwork for you, that's really where people have been like, okay, this is really valuable in my life because she's going to tell it like it is. It isn't just selling to me. It's being that best friend that's taking that time to go through all of these different outfits, go through all of these different fits and tell me the truth about it. Like, I always think of when I'm talking to anyone on social media, I'm talking to my best friend. I would tell you the truth of how this fits, how this feels, just like I was telling my best friend to buy it.
You mentioned that idea of sharing your sizes on everything. And that's something that has obviously been part of what you do for a long time. And it's not something that everybody does. It also reminds me, again, of that conversation I referred to a little bit earlier that I had with Shay McGee. There was a point early on in her career before she had reached the worldwide fame and as a designer that she has today, where it would seem obvious now, right, that the designer would share the paint colors and every item and where they got it, but it wasn't always that way. And there was a point where she would post something on Instagram and people would start asking questions in the comments about what color the paint is. And there was this moment that she describes actually in her book where she debates whether or not she would be giving away her secrets. Now, it's a little different than your context, but she decided, I'm just going to share. And suddenly that's when things started to take off for her and her brand really started to grow. How hard was it? Did you spend a lot of time wrestling? It's obviously different than sharing a paint color, sharing your personal sizes and exactly what everything is and what size every outfit is. Did you spend a lot of time thinking about that? Or was that when you made that decision to do that and be so direct about it? Or was it something that you just said, you know what, I'm going to do this because this is what people need to hear in order to make these decisions?
Well, it's still awkward. I mean, it still is a little uncomfortable because, I mean, you have a wife, our weight fluctuates. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's just life. That truly is. And so I had to get uncomfortable and say, it's okay. I'm in my mind, I have to always tell myself, like, this is helping someone. This is helping someone. This is helping someone because it's not comfortable. I think that we all want to look and feel our best. And I did also intentionally start adding, especially on my Facebook pages, all the outfits that don't fit well and how bad they fit. And, in bringing people into the absurdity that is women's sizing, that it is not us, it is them. And so that they can feel really confident when something doesn't fit them. It's not you, it's not me, it's the clothes. And I think that we have a good giggle in a lot of those places with that.
Ryanne, well, there is no question that you live the everybody pulls a tarp mindset. You're constantly thinking about others and how you can serve them. And that is so central to being a tarp puller. I am so grateful for our friendship and for all that I've gotten to learn from you, and certainly for this conversation today. I love rooting for you from afar and watching all of your success. And I know the in many ways you're just getting started. So thank you for being a tarp puller, recertified as a member of the Everybody Pulls a Tarp family. And we will have to do a part 3 sometime, but hopefully you haven't had more geographic moves since then. Hopefully you get some stability between now and the time we do part 3.
Yeah, at our Albuquerque house, and we'll be there for a bit. So
excellent. Well, Ryanne, thank you so much for everything that you do. I think I can speak on behalf of all of your community and followers, and that you're living the Everybody Pulls a Tarp mindset, and you are impacting lives in such a positive way by thinking selflessly and doing for others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you're like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.